giving a few examples of how vulnerable Africa is in the area of food security. I'll start by bringing out some figures from the State of Food Security in Africa, which was released in July 2024. And in that report, it was stated that hunger is rising in Africa and that 1 out of 5 Africans faced hunger in 2023. And further that if things remain the same, 300 million Africans will be chronically undernourished by 2030. And of course, we are also vulnerable to the rising population of Africa. Through the rising population, there is demand for food. And because of the large population, a lot of households are not able to make savings. And because of low levels of domestic savings, it's very, very difficult to mobilize financing for investment. Currently, officially, the population of Africa is 1.5 billion people. And it is going to be 3 billion people by the year 2070. And the current population of Africa is 18% of the global population. And it's going to be 25% of the global population by 2015. And in the 22nd century, the year 2100, Africa's population is going to be somewhere between 38 to 40% of the global population. So the continent is a young continent, but that brings in trend the challenge of promoting food security among our people. Then we're also vulnerable to food imports. We are highly dependent on food imports. The figures have been mentioned. I do not need to mention those figures. And there's a result of that. When the prices of food rise, actually when there are disruptions, let me say it that way, in the supply of imported food, the prices rise. And a good example of this is the disruption of food imports from Ukraine and Russia as a result of the conflict between those two countries. And in many of our countries, there's a huge surge in food inflation. In spite of these vulnerabilities, we have the capacity to change the situation. We have the capacity to move from being vulnerable to being competitive and to being resilient and self-sufficient. And we are doing this at the level of the African Union through our department and other stakeholders. One of which is leveraging Africa's vast arable land. In the meetings, I think it has been said repeatedly that Africa has vast tracts of arable land. Many of our countries are opening up their lands for agricultural production. A good example is in the DRC. They are also collaborating with the African Development Bank to promote huge investments in the agricultural field. A good example is Ethiopia. Ethiopia used to import wheat. But as a result of financing from the African Development Bank, the country is now able to meet domestic demand for wheat. And it's also looking at possibilities of exporting some of these wheat to neighboring countries. And also collaborating with the African Export-Import Bank. We're coming up with a comprehensive Africa Agro-Parks program, which is going to promote regional cooperation in food production, food storage, and the other aspects of the food system. So far, we've got initial projects of regional cooperation in food production between Zambia and Zimbabwe, and also between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. And of course, we're also leveraging the platform of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Through the African Continental Free Trade Area, we have started the process of creating a single African market. Promoting policy and regulatory harmonization so that all those do not become impediments to intra-African trade. Of course, as Africa, and it has been indicated in the meeting, we have the general key challenge of low productivity. We may invest much, but the output is limited vis-a-vis demand. And we have taken measures to ensure that we improve access to technology, we improve access to capital, and we enhance intra-African trade in agriculture. Of course, there are also other challenges, both at the continental level and at the international level. One of which is related to environmental sustainability. When you look at the African continent, in a given year, in one part there's flooding, in another part there's drought, and there are also heat waves. And all these lead to poor water quality, and also more or less the lands are degraded, and that has an adverse impact on agricultural productivity. Then there are also international issues related to environmental sustainability. The EU has come up with the deforestation guidelines, which they are going to use to see if imports from other parts of the world in the EU of food products meet environmental standards. If they do not, they are not going to be allowed to come into that market. And there is also the EU cross-border adjustment mechanism, which is going to be applied generally on all other products other than just agriculture. And the US is also working on what they are going to call the US Foreign Pollution Control Act. So, as we embark on agricultural production across Africa, our task is to ensure that the work we do is environmentally sustainable, so that we are able to reach out to export markets, and we are also contributing to promoting environmental sustainability across Africa. As a department, we fully support the Post-Malabo Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program, or Caadp. And this program is going to be a key input in a major document that was going to bring out before the heads of state and government when they meet in February this year. And this is the strategic framework on key actions to achieve inclusive growth and sustainable development across Africa. Through that program, we would like to position African countries to grow at rates of 7 to 10% annually in the next 30 to 50 years, and wanted to increase investments across Africa. So that document is going to be very, very, very important in this regard. And we're also going to use it as a platform for promoting agribusiness across Africa. And of course, the issue of financing is very, very key. And there are a number of elements of the financing question. One is public finances. We are working to improve taxation across Africa. Africa has the lowest ratio of GDP, taxation to GDP, about 5% in some countries. The African average is 15%. You compare that to the Caribbean and South America, it's about 27%. You compare that to the EU. The lowest in the EU is about 34%, and the highest is about 42%. So we have a lot of work, and we are doing it to improve mobilization of public finances through taxation. And we are also discussing with the African private sector on how to unlock the investable wealth that they hold. I don't know if some of you have read the Africa Investment Wealth Report 2024. It's very easy. You can Google it and you'll be able to get it. In that document, it's clearly stated that when you look at the African billionaires, the centimillionaires, and other millionaires, their combined investable wealth is 2.5 trillion US dollars. They are not able to invest that across Africa because they are not satisfied with the conditions. So we are in discussion with them, with the other partners like the African, actually not just African Export-Import Bank, but the Alliance of African Financial Institutions, so that we hear from them what we need to do as the public sector to unlock those resources. And through that, we should be able to mobilize private sector financing into agriculture and other activities. Then we also have the challenges of illicit financial flows from Africa. On average, we lose about 89 billion US dollars as a result of illicit financial flows. So work is underway, and one of which is through the UN Convention on International Tax Cooperation, where the African delegation has come out very, very strongly to say the issue of illicit financial flows should be part of the UN Framework Convention on International Tax Cooperation. And of course, we are also collaborating at the global level. I'll give the example of the G20. The African Union now is a permanent member of the G20. Under the Brazilian presidency, we established the Global Alliance Against Poverty and Hunger. And the African Union is a member of that alliance, and that alliance is going to have a regional office in Addis Ababa, headquarters of the African Union. And a number of African countries are also in the Global Alliance. Then the current president of the G20 is under South Africa. They are also going to come up with a task force on food security. And Africa is going to collaborate very, very, very closely with South Africa, which is a full member of the African Union, to ensure that we improve food security across Africa. So this is the briefing that I wanted to give you, and I'm available for any questions for this time round. I yield the floor and await any questions if you have any. Thank you very much, Moderator.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Okay, we have come to our question and answer section. Let me see by a show of hands if there is anyone who needs a clarification or has questions to ask.
That's right.
It looks like. Okay, so we don't have any questions.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner, thank you so much. We do have a team that is filming for us. Maybe you might give them a minute or two of your time.
Okay.
So that they can have, I think they came in a bit late, so they might want to catch up with that.
Okay.
Otherwise, the rest of the colleagues, thank you very much for attending this briefing. I'd like to also inform you that immediately after this, we are having the Commissioner of Health, Humanitarian Affairs, and Social Development. She'll be joining us in a few minutes. So if you stay with us, we'll be able to continue with that. Thank you so much. The augury team, maybe you might want to come up.
Yes, a very good afternoon once again. We thank you so much for keeping it with us as we continue to give you the Caadp Kampala Summit 2025. Following up on all the steps, today is the closure day, day 3 and the closure day. And very soon we'll go to Munyonyo, take you to Munyonyo live, where there will be the plenary session discussing the Kampala Declaration before it will be adopted. And again, there will be other presentations from the heads of states and other dignitaries. That was a discussion between some of the delegates, and we shall have more of it. But as we continue, we'll still continue with other discussions and interviews with technocrats and other people within the food-related sector, agriculture and food, a sector like that, to get information to do with food. Remember, the target for Caadp and all that its endeavors are is food security and nutrition on the African continent. Now, as we continue, we want to talk to someone from NARO, from their other arm called NAFIRI. That's the National Fisheries Resources Research Institute, in brief, NAFIRI. They handle issues to do with the fish industry in this beautiful part of Africa, Uganda, and we're going to be talking to him. His name is Dr. Mark Olokotum. He's the programs leader of Fish Habitat Management Program at NAFIRI, and NAFIRI is NARO. Doctor, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing?
I'm very good.
What do you make of Caadp?
Well, thank you for hosting me, and a very good afternoon to our viewers. Caadp has come at the right time, and as we're focusing on building resilient food systems, and like you mentioned, NAFIRI, as an organ of NARO, we are mandated to carry out research on one priority commodity, which is fish and fisheries. So for us to also support the food systems, we must focus on fish. So in this case, we do research on fish in the wild or in the lakes, rivers, and the fish or aquaculture, that is rearing of fish. So in this aspect, we are making sure that fish is actually available. As a country, we already have a target of at least 1.7 million metric tons of fish, which should have per year, available for all Ugandans. Now, to do that, we have undertaken research. For example, we can start with making fish available. Do we have the right seed of fingerling? Do we have the fingerling growing? If they grow, are they being fed? Are they eating the most useful feed? I mean, the feed should be well balanced so that the fish is able to grow, and then you have food as a country. Of course, we don't forget that fish also lives in the wild. We need to develop management systems that are actually having our fish able to survive and to reach your table. So we do research in how the policies should be done, the MCS, management, control and surveillances. So we find that developing a resilient system helps us to have sustainable fish productions, both in the wild and also in aquaculture. That is ponds, cages, even tanks. You can even have...
Generally, fish farming.
Yeah, even in your backyard, you can actually have fish.
Now, the endeavors, according to the deliberations that we had from the heads of state in their deliberations in the morning, in the extraordinary meeting of heads of state of Caadp, they were all looking at how we can avail food on the African continent.
Yes.
Yes. How can we take good use of the fish industry in Uganda in the endeavors of ensuring food availability, food security, and nutrition? How can we take good use of your sector?
Thank you very much. If we look at it in terms of the available fish, I'll use Nile perch. Or
Nile perch is mputa.
I'll use tilapia or ngege. Then I'll use the small fish, the mukene and muziri. So the production of just these three can sustain at least a normal Ugandan to have at least 10 kilograms of fish per year, per person, which is actually recommended by FAO. Now, we must protect the fish, one, breeding areas, and then, of course, that is guided by research that we do. Then we send the information to the management personnel. Then we invest into a generation of technologies for the harvest, sustainable harvest for these fishes, so that the fish is actually available for everybody. Now, for example, for mukene or muziri, we know it's highly abundant. You eat it whole. We also harvest it in abundance. So we need a technology that can harvest, and then we make it readily available for human consumption, not just making it into animal feed.
Okay.
So the technologies like the solar tent dryer, whether there is rain, you can still dry your mukene, and it's actually standard, and you find it in your supermarkets.
Okay.
And if we go into aquaculture, we are doing selective breeding to have fast-growing tilapia, fast-growing catfishes, or emale, or even the carp, so that within 6 to 8 months, you're actually having fish available for human consumption. Therefore, we're having food security.
Okay.
Yes.
Have we tried that on a score of 10, 100%? How much have we tried as Uganda to do whatever you are narrating in order to have fish contribute to our food security plan as a country?
Well, we contribute as narrow. We have several food